Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by CoolSomething.com, mana traders, as well as Twitch subs and Patreon supporters just like you. My name is Evan Irwin, and get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, PowrDragn.
What's up, everybody? And this should be a good one because there's a lot to talk about right now.
a lot of craziness out there. Reuben Bressler.
Yeah, we got a wide x-axis and a tall y-axis on stuff to talk about. Lots of stuff, and some of those topics are pretty deep, actually, this week.
Deep and wide, you say. Yeah.
Phrasing.
We have a whole song about it, man. What do you want from it? Now,
No
listen.
Diddy.
If you missed our pre-show, in which we talk about all sorts of weird stuff, movies, games, and dietary needs, we get started as we do. Get some patrons and subscribers to this channel get access to that extended version early. Kick it off with our first pick and that code push. Go to CoolStuffInc.com. Use the promo code MagicMics to get 5% off your next order. Anything in the store, anything. Boxes, supplies, sleeves, try other games. Go nuts.
There's a bunch of stuff coming from Modern Horizons, and you can save some money.
And 5% off. That's 5%.
You might as well
off.
go get it right now.
That's $5 for every hundo. So save you some money and support your favorite streamer with your suggestions at the end of the show to see who we raid tonight. Thanks to our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock. And we're going to talk about Modern Horizons 3. The full set is finally here. I will say this has been a rough and tumble preview season where things just started leaking. And then Wizards tried to put out the leaky article, and then things kept leaking, and then Wizards didn't really talk about it. And then we just kind of acted like those didn't exist until all of them existed, and then the rest of the set was just kind of like here. Because you can only plug so many leaks before the ship just seems a little silly and underwater.
Yeah, and like, people still are saying, like, well, Wizards probably put out all these leaks. I'm like, no, they didn't. Like, what are, like, again, I'm all for a good conspiracy theory, but you got to explain to me what the benefit is.
Right.
Like, why does somebody want to do this or cover it up or whatever? Like, if you saw how much effort went into Wizards trying to plan a preview season and all the people they have to contact and all the images they have to make and whatever, like, this just tears up all that work.
Right.
So, like, they don't want to do that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, this season has been interesting. If for that alone, I think because they've done generally a pretty good job at keeping the lid tight on what's coming out and what you see. And Modern Horizons 3, very important set. Let's recall, Modern Horizons 2 was the best-selling set of all time for many years. Until Lord of the Rings, it was the ruler of the roost. They reprinted it like 4 or 5 times, like full-blown big old reprints, and sold an absolute ton of it. So, yeah, it's important to get this stuff right. Why in the world would they send out potato pics for their billion-dollar product?
That's also it, right? If they were going to do it, they chose, like, the most shady, like, let me see if I can get my camera on my hip and grab a shot of something coming off
and
the
also,
press
if they
or
did it, they didn't even capitalize.
Right.
Yeah, also true.
Just a bunch of nonsense, honestly. And so, as we do, we picked 3 cards for the last for the 2 preview weeks to talk about. And Reuben, let's talk about your first card.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously Modern Horizons 3 is going to be chock full of, and I recently learned the definition of the word chalk, but we don't have to get into get into it there. Chock full of powerful cards. We are unsurprised that everything is powerful, from the mythics and rares to the uncommons and, of course, the commons. And one of the commons I want to talk about is a card that is sure to see play, specifically in Pauper. Last I checked, now I'm not an expert in the Pauper format, so those of you that are experts in the Pauper format can correct me. But last I looked, protection from red was a thing that popped up a non-zero percentage of the time, specifically on Crimson Acolyte and things like Apostle's Blessing, and if I recall, Guardian of the Guild Pact, although I might be showing my age there. So wouldn't it be great if your mono red deck had a very good removal spell that itself was colorless? Well, good news, Magic the Gathering fans, because Fanged Flames is here. Fanged Flames is a generic into red sorcery with Devoid, which means that this card has no color. Fanged Flames deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If that creature or planeswalker would die this turn, exile it instead. Get out of here, Crimson Acolyte. Nobody wants you.
Yeah, what's crazy is this is like the second time we've done this. Just now it deals 4 damage as opposed to 3 damage, which is even crazier. So you can take out bigger stuff for 2 mana and not have to have that restriction on it.
Yeah, what was the original Ghost Flame?
Ghost Flame.
Ghostfire. Ghostfire.
Ghost
Oh,
Flame.
yeah.
So they printed Ghostfire in Future Sight, which hinted at the Eldrazi, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And hinted at Devoid later becoming a thing. They never printed anything exactly like Ghostfire, but then we got the Ghostfire Blade, and we got Devoid, and lots of stuff like that.
Yeah, so there was a 2-mana deal 2 in Oath, and Ghostfire was 3 mana for 3 damage. This is 2 mana sorcery speed. But for 4 damage to creature or planeswalker, and you exile it if it dies.
Right.
Those
that's
are
a
all
lava coil. That's a obliterating blast.
Yeah, that's a good clean design right there for a nice common to get around restrictions. What else you got here?
Okay, so I have seen no hype about this card, and I need someone to tell me if I'm just missing it or if I'm foolish. Because last I checked, Necropotence was still banned in Legacy, and is one of the most iconic format ruining cards of all time, and we're getting it for Modern in Necrodominance. Little bit different, but kind of the same. Necrodominance is black for a legendary enchantment, mythic, that says skip your draw step. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. And the 4th ability on the card is, if a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Then it also has the restrictor of your maximum hand size is 5.
Which is the big restriction.
That's the big restriction on the card. We have 3 small restrictions on the card, right? It's a legendary, so we can't have multiples, so we can't play a second for when our opponent disenchants our first. I guess that's our first drawback. The second is that our maximum hand size is 5, and when you're trying to refill your hand, like you used to do in the old Necro-Winter decks, a 5 is an actual limiter. That's a real thing. And if a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead, is a more wide-ranging wording of something like what Necropotence had.
Well,
but
no,
it's not.
You don't get any dice triggers. You don't get any dice triggers.
Right, exactly. So it's an instead trigger instead of when you would discard, instead do thing.
Right.
So you don't get to play this with your Blood Artists and stuff like that.
It is a replacement effect, not a triggered effect. So you can't counter it, you can't stop it, and I think that's part of in terms of while you're refilling your hand to do, it feels like trying to get dice triggers is something you would be doing. So that's one of the ways they kind of just cut it off at the knees, and I think we've seen this in some of the other designs. Make something that was stupidly busted, but just unbust it a little bit, just see if you can unbust it. And if it's 5-card restriction, no dice triggers ever, nothing else is getting in your graveyard while it's out, and you can't have a draw step, is that enough? Maybe. I get to play with the real thing in Timeless, and it is busted. So I don't know how good this one is, but I also can't Dark Ritual it out turn 1. So
there's a fair amount of creatures that have lifelink that are 1 and 2 mana that you could play with this, right? I think it's just gonna be a matter of, can somebody find a deck to play in Modern that's efficient enough on the low mana cost things to take advantage of this? Because obviously, when we're playing Necro and other formats, you have Dark Ritual and all the things that are super hyper efficient. I don't know if we have that, but there's got to be some way that this even is just a 1 or 2 of in some decks. It's got to do something. I can't imagine it's just not going to be playable.
There's a whole cycle of the elementals. You know what I mean?
I was just going to say, Grief is still legal in that format.
Yeah.
So we get rid of extra Necrodominances. We go Thoughtseize, Grief, turn 1, aggressive 2-drop, Necrodominance, refill our hand, and I'm fine with that as a deck in the format, sort of like a Necropotence aggro deck, like what was played early in the Necro-Winter with the 2-mana Knights, and you just go swamp, creature, pay 3 life, swamp, creature, pay 3 life kind of gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. I will definitely say that. I think it's a great mythic for that, and that if it's busted, they're going to be banning it. But if it's not, it's probably right on the edge, and that's exactly where
I'll
you
give
want to
some
be.
Foreshadowing. I have a card that works with that later.
Oh boy,
Nice.
fun. Reuben, what's your third card?
All right, my third card is just a very exciting creature. It is a legendary creature, so you could make this your commander, and it actually goes very well with a very popular commander deck that already exists. That is Nadu Winged Wisdom. Nadu Winged Wisdom is a generic green-blue for a legendary creature bird wizard, 3/4 with flying. So we're already a 3-mana 3/4 flyer before we even get to an ability.
Good rate.
Those are some good stats. Creatures you control have, quote, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. So there's a very exciting thing you can do with Nadu. Obviously goes straight into the Ivy decks that are all about targeting yourself. Very exciting with Shuko, which is a equipment that equips for 0. So you just have a Shuko in play, and you go equip Nadu, equip the other creature, and get 4 triggers immediately. Very exciting card, solid all the way around, and if you can go crazy with it, then it's even better. And also, I am one of the world's biggest River Hoopoe fans, so to see we have a legendary Hoopoe is very exciting for me.
What's wild about this card is usually when we see these type of effects, it's you may look at the top card if it's a land, put it into play or whatever, right? Or put it on the bottom of the library. You either get a land or you get to draw a card.
Yeah.
I mean, like
it's upside or upside.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's no like maybe a thing's gonna happen. Like you target your stuff, you're gonna get a card or you're gonna get a land. Seems fine.
So without looking, how much do you think Shuko is selling for right now? It was only printed as an uncommon and Betrayers of Kamigawa.
I bet it went through the roof. You're
after
right.
this week, it's probably like a $15 uncommon.
$16.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
that's
I
what
was
I
going to
thought.
say lower. That's crazy.
$16 for the old Shuko. You want to talk about an uncommon no one gave a damn about.
Yep.
Oh, my God. And desperately needs a reprint, quite frankly. But yeah, very cool, very excited. Only triggers twice. We've already passed the only triggers once train. Now we're only triggering twice.
I love the phrase only triggers twice each turn. But it only triggers twice per creature.
Right.
So if you have 3 creatures in play, you can get 6 triggers.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and plus Shuko was obviously played back in the day of the Cephalid breakfast decks or whatever.
Right.
Thank you, FT or FTwitchK. But regardless, very exciting stuff for a lot of people. PowrDragn, what's your first card?
All right. Before I talk about this first card, I have to pour one out and just say, man, I remember the days when our 1-mana dudes were like Jackal Pups.
Right.
And we were excited about a Jackal Pup on turn 1. Jackal Pup ain't a damn thing anymore. Because now we have Ocelot Pride, which is a weird name for a singular 1-mana 1/1, but it makes sense when you read the ability. But this is a first strike lifelinking 1/1 for 1 white mana. Also has a sin, so randomly when you have 10 permanents, you get the City's Blessing. And at the beginning of your end step, if you've gained any life this turn, you create a 1/1 white cat creature token. Then, if you have the City's Blessing, for each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, you make a copy. Not even just of the cats, just of tokens in general that you made this turn. You get to make extra copies. And if you're making tokens, there's a real chance you're going to get to the City's Blessing pretty quickly. This card is silly, man.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't even make sense. And it has first strike on top of its lifelink, so it's going to be hard to chump block on the first attack. Like,
I mean, this is the type of card that you hate that Bowmasters exists, and you appreciate that Bowmasters exists.
Right.
Because this card could absolutely go nuts. There is nothing, honestly, at this point, whenever I see 1 mana and then the mythic symbol, I'm just like holding on to the railing. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Where we, especially to Modern Horizons 3, Modern Horizons said, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
1 mana creature mythic.
Absurd.
Card is
even if
bonkers.
it's like turn 1, play this, turn 2, equip it, enchant it with some aura that gives it +1 or +2 or whatever, and you're kind of just off to the races if they don't have an instant kill spell.
Yeah,
Yep.
card's bananas.
Because you're gonna connect and make a 1/1. You
my
don't have to
roommate
connect.
has a gear
You gain
edge
life
deck.
because of lifelink, right?
My roommate has a Geared commander deck, and Geared allows you to make token copies of non-token creatures, and this is going to make additional copies of those. And that's crazy. There's a bunch of stuff in this new set that is really attractive for making new tokens. There's a 2-mana 3/1 that says whenever you make a non-token creature populate, for example. There's a bunch of ways that these can all sort of combine together into some sort of new. Maybe there's like a populate deck with like Blade Splicer, like an aggro white tokens deck that comes out of this.
And there's already a mono white, life gain deck that this is instantly in there. Soul Warden turn 1, go nuts. You're already off the races.
That's the other thing, by the way, because you don't even need to attack. Like if you gained life, you're just going to get a 1/1. Like and it can literally just sit there.
Right, and then you get the City's Blessing out of nowhere. It's not going to take more than probably 2 turns.
Right, especially when you're making tokens.
Like this is likely the Ragavan of the set in terms of, but Ragavan for me was like Smack does the greatest creature ever made. Obviously, this one is like, well, Bowmasters exist. Well, they don't always have Bowmasters,
Think about
and you might have a second copy. Like,
think about the fun with this in a Soul Sisters type deck, right? Like, comes into play, you gain life, you make a thing, but then the other thing gets to gain life. But then you have the City's Blessing, so now you get to copy that thing that just came into play.
And gain more life.
Yeah, like. So ridiculous.
This card is bananas. It's pre-ordering for like $1 million, so we'll see. It
wouldn't surprise me if it's $40 already.
What's your second card?
My second card is not nearly as busted, but generally just useful, and it's Solar Transformer. It's a 2 colorless artifact. Does enter the battlefield tap, but when it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy, which is super sweet. And then you can tap it for a colorless, or you can tap it and pay an energy to get a mana of any color. Like, this is just really, really useful. It's one of those cards, like, you could play it in Commander in a multicolor deck if you just want something, a good mana rock that fixes your colors. You can play this, obviously, in the energy decks, and this solves some of the color issues that you might have for some different things. Like, a good, useful card that I wouldn't be surprised seeing going for between $3 and $5 for a long time.
I appreciate the fact that there's so many energy cards in the set that are just, like, bread and butter. You know what I mean? They're just like good old fashioned, like the draw card, get 2 energy counters. That stuff is the cornerstone, the base, that you need to build these energy decks off of. And this is exactly the type of card that you need for those decks, where you're like, it's a mana rock, but it also gives me energy, but I can also use that energy to do something with it. And all of those things work together. And that to me is beautiful design. And that's why I'm pretty excited about the energy deck possibilities because of things like that, where they realized you need that foundation of cards that just do little, incremental things that build up to your bigger energy payoffs.
Yeah, especially considering how many cards let you spend energy instead of even playing mana. Like, This almost pushes you way further ahead for just 2 mana.
All right, let's talk about your third pick. What you got?
This is the card I was alluding to that actually goes along with Reuben's card. But this is Consuming Corruption. It is black, instant, deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life, where X is the number of swamps you control. Like, this is just a very clean 2 mana, get to wipe stuff out, much larger, gain some life. Like, doing all the things you want to do in that style of deck, but if you're in... I was going to say mono black, but hell, we have so many lands that count as 2 different land types that you could still have multicolor and still have stuff that counts as swamps. So this could actually see a fair amount of play. This is a really cool card.
I mean, and for us old school, this is Tendrils of Corruption from Time Spiral for just 2 mana, but also hits planeswalkers.
Right. It's a Pro Tour winning card that at half the cost that also hits planeswalkers.
And Urborg also exists in Modern.
Yeah, that's true too. Urborg does still exist. That's a thing.
So 2 mana.
Hell yeah.
I love that. I'll take my corrupts that can't hit players for 2 mana. That is lovely. All right. So for my picks here, these are cards that either like scare me or I think they're going to annoy a lot of people. Or with my third option, what I would describe as the most significant sideboard card designed in the past maybe 12 years or so. we'll talk about it. First up here for my picks is Arena of Glory. Arena of Glory is a rare land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain. You tap to add a red mana, or you use a red mana tap and exert it, which means it doesn't untap next turn, to add 2 red mana. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, it gains haste until end of turn. Incredible. There's nothing scarier in Magic, literally. And all the time, I'm coming up on 30 years playing this wacky, crazy game of ours. And of all the time, there is nothing scarier than fast mana. Just period. There's in full stop. Whenever something breaks or is stupid, it's almost always because they got fast mana before they should, or whatever. And so, turn 2, I exert this, and I get to play whatever I want, and it's going to smack your face. That's kind of incredible. There's lots of really cool options and super cool creatures that don't necessarily have haste. I mean, heck, even, you play a Ragavan and something else, like, they're going to come and get you. It doesn't say only one of those creatures get it. If any creatures with that mana are used with that mana, you can go. Or, and again, you don't even have to cast creatures. Like, I feel like there's a world where this said only creatures, and they're just like, let's just open it up to whatever. So now we have a 2-mana land in red for a very low bar, and that's both scary and exciting, which is my favorite kind of Magic card.
Yeah, I'm into it. I like this card, especially in like Gruul type aggro decks, or maybe even Djinn needs something like this because Djinn has sort of fallen off a little bit. Maybe there's some options that you can get some big, hasty, scary things with this card. Yeah, I'm into it. I think this gives value, like you're saying, to things that don't necessarily have haste, but need to get like 1 attack in, or if it damages the opponent, or when it attacks, whatever. Right? I think this can help solve some of those problems.
Yeah. One of the first cards I thought of when I saw this was Najeela the Blade Blossom, that herself does not have haste, but has an attack trigger. And being able to get that on turn 2 is a huge deal. There are a bunch of really powerful 3-drops that, if they had haste, would put them over the top into playability and, all-star status. And I really like that this is available. It is scary, absolutely. Being able to play a 3-drop on turn 2, or 4-drop on turn 3 without too much trouble is pretty scary, or even a 5-drop on turn 3. Let's be real.
You have to pay a mana to activate the
So
ability.
It's equal mana.
So it's 2 mana.
It's equal mana.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately...
So it's not that... Okay.
It's
not
not
ramp.
It's more
than
than
I will say about it, though, is I think this is good when you're playing those aggro decks that don't fare well against the control decks and the sweepers.
Sure.
Because then now the next thing is always going to have haste, right? Like,
right.
That's a big selling point for this card.
And I would also, because you got to imagine that one of the ways that they use haste and or remove haste is to help make those creatures like look better and sound better. Look at a card like Elder Gargaroth. That card is held back because you have to give your opponent a whole turn to think about how to, oh my God, what am I going to do about this 6/6 with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample? Well, now it's got haste, so you get all of the goodness and that sweet trigger to draw cards and gain life and make creatures and so on. And there's a bunch of creatures like that just, fall in that scale of, damn, if I can haste this thing, I can really go over the top. But if I've got to sit there and give them a whole turn, it's always going to die. I can't take advantage of the shields being down or whatever. And this is the type of card that lets you do that, which I think is really cool. All right. So let's move on here to my second card, which is another banger, if you will, in Ugin's Binding. This is a mythic 3-mana instant, and another one of those things where I'm like, oh God, here we go. For a blue and 2 generic mana, it is a instant with Devoid. This card has no color. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. Okay, cool, whatever, fine. It's it's a bounce spell. However, whenever you cast a colorless spell with mana value 7 or greater, you may exile Ugin's Binding from your graveyard. When you do, return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. And that is a giant, crazy effect in multiplayer formats. This is one of the cards where they're like, this is Commander Masters all over. It's like, whatever, dude. It's a very powerful card. It's very cool, and it seems absolutely incredible.
Yeah, this one was on my short list of cards I wanted to talk about, so I'm glad we're talking about it. This card, so Kozilek's Uprising or something like that, was a Pyroclasm that had a similar effect when you played in Eldrazi. You could cast something similar again from your graveyard. And I think there's another one that exists, but I don't remember its name off the top of my head. This is the best of the bunch, and Kozilek's, God, what is it called? Kozilek's Uprising?
Something
like that.
Yeah.
It was modern playable. Saw a lot of play in standard. Like, was very good. This, being an instant and being able to interact with your opponent early, and then sit there and threaten value in your graveyard, particularly with cards that have Emerge, is a huge deal. You can trigger this with an Elder Deep Fiend and lots of stuff like that. So Ugin's Binding, I'm very afraid of in Commander and in constructed formats.
Yeah, 3 words come to mind whenever I see this card. It's just F this card. The concern I have for cards like this is that they're going to make a lot of games boring to watch. Right?
I mean,
that's what it feels like.
Right. This is Cyclonic Rift, is a card that is still $30+.
Yeah, even though it's been reprinted like 5 times.
Oh, it's been reprinted, like 6 or 7, and like depending on the whichever version. But regardless, it's been reprinted a lot, and its effect is huge. And the fact that you can get it for free while playing your spells and having your things resolve, it doesn't touch any of your stuff. You just it's almost like a bonus, for God's sake. That's a very powerful Magic card and very scary. And so we move on here to the final card I want to talk about. And like I said, this is huge. Look, I was there, y'all. The rocks were very soft. But I was there when Pithy Needle was previewed, when it was spoiled. And we flipped our lid. And we're like, oh my God, the 1 mana artifact goes down turn 1, can finally stop all of these stupid shenanigans, all these terrible things we hate, can stop Sensei's Divine Tops and whatever else was going on at the time we were pissed off at. And this card it's a lot. It's incredible. It's already like pre-ordered for $5+. Thank your lucky stars it's not rare or mythic. Because I want to talk a little bit about Vexing Bauble. Vexing Bauble is a multi-format, all-star sideboard card. One of the most important sideboard cards ever made. You can go ahead and quote me on that, because I've been here a long time, and I'm telling you, this thing is fantastic. Vexing Bauble, if you play any old format whatsoever, just go buy 4 of them. Just let it go. Just go get your playset and know that you'll have them forever. Vexing Bauble is 1 generic mana for an uncommon artifact that says whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Very important, because things like Chalice of the Void care about converted mana cost, and Force of Will still has that if you cast it without paying the mana for it. Well, this says no. And so it's not even done. Even if it just said that, we'd be over here flipping out, but we're not done. For 1 generic mana, tap sack it to draw a card, so it has cycling on it for all intents and purposes. So any extras that you draw, you can just cycle away. There's literally no downside than to bring these things in against the Grief players, all the Elementals players, the new sack effect cards that they can't use. Like, all of this stuff is like just negated by this 1 tiny little artifact that's going to live in sideboards forever and ever. I'm already hearing from people who play Vintage who are like, I'm getting my playset. Sure. This first thing I'm buying.
Well, of course.
Cards insane.
And not even just the older. I mean, this set alone has a bunch of either free spells, alternate casting stuff, ways to trick things into play. So yeah, this is going to do work pretty much in any format it's legal in, I'd imagine.
Right.
I mean, nice plot card, bruh.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
I'm just saying, it messes with everything. It's incredible.
Right. Flares, Forces, and Incarnations.
Yep.
Moxes.
Yep.
Black Lotus. Being 1 mana is a big deal.
It is.
We were like, there was a time where we were like, Void Mirror might make a splash somewhere, or we've seen 2 mana guys that aren't creatures or don't have some sort of effect beyond just being a sideboard hate card. Vexing Bauble being 1 mana is huge, because you can just play it on turn 1 with no additional support beyond just a land. And the fact that you can cycle it and get additional copies later, or sacrifice it when it gets targeted and replace itself, is a huge deal.
The fact that Urza's Saga can go fetch it.
Yeah.
Put one in your main deck. You know what I mean? Just like, It's good old insurance.
Hell yeah.
Why? It's just going to sit out there. And if you kind of determine or figure out that your opponent isn't playing cards that for free or whatever, just cycle it away.
Then you can cycle it.
It don't hurt nothing. Like, that's crazy. This card is just like fantastic on fantastic, and they actually got to spoil the thing because last week it got spoiled like right before the show started, and I was just flipping crap and like, we can't talk about it, but we're going to talk about it because I'm very excited to talk about it. So yeah, that card is amazing. And for our fans in Pauper, do note that Cranial Ram, which is a living weapon version of cranial plating, is definitely on the watch list. As it's very similar to cranial plating and all that glitters, but we'll see. That card is weird, but we're going to move on here. Out of the first pick to gather the Townsfolk, thanks to our sponsor, Mana Traders, to the best tool to enhance your Magic Online experience. Use the code MagicMikes_8N48 November 4 for 10% off your next subscription with Mana Traders, and tell them that we sent you. And we're going to move on here to gather the Townsfolk, talk about some stuff in the community. Now, one thing that came up, which was really interesting, and this is the first change, really, that we've seen in a kind of battle pass situation with Arena. I don't know, maybe since its inception, perhaps. This was something they hinted at in the video about Modern Horizons 2 coming to Arena, saying they're going to do some sort of prize wall type situation. And so, bring it up here on the screen for you guys, the Psychic Frogs Horizon Hideaway on Arena. It's a 2,800 gems to get started here, and they've already broke down the math and stuff in the subreddits and whatnot, and it's not the greatest deal of all time, but it's not the worst thing they've ever tried, as it were. It's a little bit less value depending on the way you look at it. Like, some of the packs that you get don't contribute to the golden pack thing, stuff like that. But the idea is that you're able to earn hideaway tickets, Horizon hideaway tickets, by doing quests and daily wins, and you use those to cash in for avatars and sleeves and card, styles and all of that good stuff. And I appreciate the idea. I like that they're trying something different. And ultimately, if I can go ahead and pick and choose all of the card styles, which are the number one thing I would want out of all of this stuff,
right?
And maybe pick up the rest later before it all goes away because I have extra tickets hanging around, that's cool too. And, give us more choice, and I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, it's not drastically different than what we do for the Mastery Pass or whatever.
Right.
But you get more agency over what you want. Now, I guess there's a world where you can collect most of them since the quests are like 45 points or whatever. Mm-hmm. So there's probably a world where you can get them all anyway and you just max out the value. But even if not, you're like, you know what? I just want these couple of like avatars. I want these couple of card styles. Cool. I don't have to worry about, oh man, I got to play and finish this chain of whatevers and, get all these things. So like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's at least worth a try at least once or twice and see how we feel about it.
Yeah, I like all things new idea generally. And yeah, let's see if it works. And if everyone's excited about it, I mean, give me more agency in my battle pass. I'm okay with that. That's cool.
Yeah. The battle pass tab in my Arena mostly lies fallow. That is not a thing I care about. So any level of excitement and intrigue that you can add to that, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, the battle pass honestly feels more random than most things in my experience. I don't go and look at it and go like, oh, I get to unlock this pack after 3 more wins. You know what I mean? It's more like I won something and I'm like, oh, there's a pack now. Oh, cool. I'm gonna go open that. I don't plan on it. I don't think about it. So this at least gets me in there and says like, what do I want right now? How do I value it? That's cool. I'll take it.
Yeah, also, awesome. They have a player draft token you can get as well as part of the reward. So if you are a drafter, that's a thing you can snag.
Oh, that sounds great. And, and it mirrors that experience of events, where events are largely driven these days by prize walls. And that that did 2 things. For the organizers, it made things a little bit cheaper on the costs. And for the players, it gave them a little bit more agency while helping the event basically stay afloat. And how that stuff that's why that stuff came into being to start with. Cool. But yeah, I thought that was super rad. Good ideas from them. Congratulations to Dana Fischer winning their Pioneer RCQ. We've seen this little girl basically grow up to a young woman, and she did a great job. She, of course, played mono green, as is her go-to for many, many years now. And congratulations to them.
Played Devotion this time around, not the elves that perhaps were most common with Dana playing, but very powerful looking list. Had a lot of green pips in its costs. And yeah, I mean, it's tough to win one of these. Like, this is not a joke. This is a hard thing to do, so congratulations.
Yeah, took down 35 other competitors. That is not an easy feat. So congratulations to them. Rock and roll. Let's go. That was awesome. All right, let's move on here to just a quick note. Wizards does this sometimes. They just kind of quietly have noted that they're getting rid of Efreets. Yeah. No more Efreets. Everybody's going to be a Djinn. If they were Efreet before, they'll be a Djinn now. If they reprint an Efreet, it'll be a Djinn instead. That's what it's looking like anyway. And yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, they already started that already with sort of the Pinnacle Monk that they just revealed, along with Bloodfire Expert from back in the what was that? The KTK days. So
this is one I felt like we should have done forever. Like, even before we started doing Oracle updates, I felt like they should have been the same thing, because back in the day, I even remember having discussion. Well, what's the difference between a Efreet and a Djinn or whatever? It's just
right.
Like, there's really not enough of a difference. So it makes sense that they're just bringing them in line.
Yeah, Djinn, as I understand, like an Efreet is a type of Djinn, as I understand it. Similar to a Marid is also a type of Djinn. I know about Marids from Dungeons and Dragons. They are elementally linked. So an Efreet is a fire Djinn, and a Marid is a water Djinn. And then there are other types of Djinns also.
Just like the different colors of dragons, basically.
Yeah,
similar.
Yeah.
Yes, very similar to that.
There you go.
It is not a monster cryptozoology lesson that I have in my head, but that is my understanding of how it works. So it makes sense for them to combine them together.
Well, happy belated birthday to Mark Rosewater, Magic's head designer. They turned 57 on the 25th, and as is their way, famously to eat their Alaskan crab legs every year on their birthday, and I hope those were delicious. But yeah, Rosewater 57, me over here at 43. Jeez.
Bro, let me tell you though, crab legs up in the Pacific Northwest, they hit different, y'all.
I bet they do.
Dude, I'm telling you, the seafood up here, it don't hit the same as it did back home in Texas. Like, it's different.
I bet. So congratulations to them. Let's move on here to some desperate ravings, and a quick reminder to check out CoolStuffInc.com and use the code MagicMikes to do so.
Yeah. All
right. So we learned some incredible information this week about Arena. Now, Arena has often been a black box, one that doesn't always work super great, but often just a black box if we don't know how everything turns, all the gears move, and all the algorithms are going to algorithm in terms of the way that we draw our cards and sort of the way that we get matchmaking done, and particularly the way they get matchmaking done on a casual level. Now, when it's ranking, you want to get people with close ranks, sure. But when it comes to Brawl, it's got weights for all of these cards. And if the weight is high enough, you get thrown in what's described as the Hell Queue. The Hell Queue came from a League of Legends thing where if people were like mean and like grief players, they would go into this special queue where they can only play against themselves. That's the Hell Queue. Our Hell Queue is if you play something super duper powerful, you will always play against something super duper powerful. You don't want to get accidentally swept in there. How could you do that? Apparently by playing Zenith. What was that card? Something Zenith?
Zenith Flare.
Zenith Flare, yeah. Zenith Flare, which happened to be the 5 times higher point value than any other card you could possibly play, which is weird. But either way, some update to the program let you compare the weights of cards. You would get an error that your deck didn't have a high enough weight, and you swapped in cards, and that way you could see the value count for every single card at that point. So, of course, the nerds did that, as we do, and we created calculators so we can see what our deck weights are, and we know what the crazy deck weights are for cards like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, or Ragavan. They're really high, and you're going to be playing against those types of decks if that's the commanders that you use, and a lot of the cards that you use, like, for example, removal and counter spells, have very high weights that also knock you up in the queue. So, this look behind the curtain, A, probably is going to be patched out pretty quickly. B, will hopefully lead to stuff that is reweighted in a more correct way. But C just showed us that for those with the tinfoil hats, sometimes they're right.
Well, why was
Yeah.
that even considered a tinfoil hat? Like, you're
Right.
playing a ridiculous tough deck, you're going to get paired against other ridiculous tough decks.
Let me tell
Yeah.
you why. Because if you go in there and look, and we spoke about this in the pre-show a little bit, the first sliver has a pretty low point value. Because people aren't using it to play slivers, they're using it to play 5-color good stuff. So you could accidentally get kicked into the hell queue or be down playing outside of the hell queue because you picked sort of the right commander that offsets the weights of everything else. And so now they're doing the min-maxing of get me a negative number commander player, which those exist, and offset everything. So I'm at the very bottom of the queue, but I'm playing with the best cards I can while
I'm
doing
fine with
so.
that. Listen, I don't think that needs patched out. I think that's great. I think that is just more information. Listen, as the guy that wrote too much information, I am a big fan of as much information as possible. I want to know as much at going into any situation to make an educated decision going in. I don't want them to hide the ball from me. I don't want hidden, equations happening behind the scenes telling me where to go. I would like to have that information be public. I won't pay attention to it, but I like the fact that it's public.
I only halfway agree because I do think there are situations where I can see players doing this. So like, I'm going to build as griefery of a thing as I can,
Right.
but not have to play against the other top decks. So you're now going to be making a worse
Just-
player experience for the people that are just playing their fun stuff or whatever. That you put just enough cards in there so you can beat up on their decks, right? Like, I don't feel great about that.
It's tough because, a lot of times what the min-maxers will do, God bless them, is they will try to grind their fun down to a powder. You know what I mean? They will, if I can just get this thing just to the very min-max, the lowest point number with the highest amount of grief or the highest amount of power, if I could just do that one thing, and it's like you're just trying to just like get this blood from a stone or something, because sometimes you can just have fun with Magic, but not everything is perfectly min-maxed. Well, not everything is at its maximum value ever possibly, and that's sort of the danger there. But beyond that, I mean, I don't care. I'm hoping they don't patch it out because I think this is funny and silly and interesting. But
I
do
think
I
it's
expect them to?
fine.
Yes.
I think it's
Oh, they're
fine.
definitely going to patch it.
They know they're going to patch it. They want to wrest as much control as they possibly can.
Right.
And
See, for me,
But-
I don't feel it as a control. I think this is going to lead to more negative play experiences.
oh,
I
you
really
think that
do.
this will lead to worse play experience?
How about this, Reuben? Do you think this will lead to better play experiences? Having
The
this
fact that
information
it
out there?
exists?
Do you think it would be a net positive or a net negative that this exists? I think that's the answer.
That's a great question. I think that if the information is public, it will lead to better play experiences. Because they can respond faster to the people who are taking advantage of it.
Can they?
Can they not? Like,
I mean-
if more people are doing, if more people are trying to take advantage of a system, it's very similar to banning cards in formats, right? We're rebalancing the formats.
Right.
So instead of banning a card outright, we're turning it up on this card is hard to beat meter.
That feels way worse. That feels like more work going to people that could be putting time into something else.
Okay,
Like,
that's fair.
Because now they're just chasing every week of just like, well, now all the griefers moved to doing this. So now we got to go in and on Monday we got to figure out a new chart and then
Okay.
Right.
give them 2 weeks to figure it out. Then they got to go back in and like change cards. It's like, we don't need to be doing that.
But it's because the specificity of the data, they're able to, they will be able to
Oh,
bleed
yeah.
more effectively.
Oh,
All right,
definitely.
I'll buy that.
Look, and it also sort of ties Wizards' hands. A, that they have to use this system forever. B, that they can't go in and just like radically change some values because they've decided to, or
Why
it's a game
couldn't they?
designer experience. They still can, but what I'm saying is it would create a big wave of publicity around it, which I don't think they would ever want in terms of a casual format changing.
Here's something interesting. Like using YouTube as an example, there's a lot of people who get in like, well, what levers do I need to pull in this, that, and the other? And I keep explaining to people, YouTube will never tell us that because people are just going to keep building for the optimal thing. And then they're going to have to keep changing whatever that thing is. And then we just be doing the same thing there. Right. So I'm kind of applying that here. So whatever the optimal thing is to not have to play against everybody else's optimal thing, People will go to the very bottom of that rung or the very top of the next rung just to be able to grief people that would fall in that zone to not have to play other top decks. I'm pretty sure.
Well, funnily enough, at least the news I was hearing this morning, Google accidentally published a lot of their data on how their search results worked, and the SEO people are losing their minds. Why? Because of exactly what we're seeing, just on a really weird different scale, which is how do we optimize things min-max for content? How do you min-max for decks? Again, this is one of those like, wow, it's really there. These are the numbers. Why is this number weird? You know what I mean? And that provokes a lot of
they're going to change them numbers before the end of the week.
Oh, Lord, Jack. Everything that we've seen is probably changing in some form or fashion.
Yep.
Up one side, down the other, because, yeah, we don't get to this peek behind the curtain for very long. But it is interesting.
Oh, for sure.
Moving on here to Going Infinite, things to think about and talk about. There was a real fun tweet this week as we spoke about, or at least as we heard the news of the Star Wars experience in Orlando is closing forever. That hotel that they made for a full like a LARPing experience thing. So that's going away. And Toledo Community College said, "Hear me out. A fully immersive Magic the Gathering themed hotel." Reuben, you would be the host, right?
Right.
You would take these people through a Magic the Gathering journey.
Listen,
and it could be rad.
There's some, if you want to get into live events curated experience creation, there's a robust industry here in Los Angeles and in Vegas for that matter, and it is a booming, exploding industry. Meow Wolf is an extremely popular experience location that's opening a fourth spot pretty soon. Escape rooms have been on the rise for more than a decade.
They just opened that adult play whatever with like, it's like all carnival games and different things or whatever, but like it's geared at oversized stuff for just adults to go entertain. They opened in like February, I think it was.
There is a hunger and a yearning for detaching oneself from a screen and experiencing the feelings and the storytelling that you get with a screen in real life. And no one's truly cracked the code yet. So I think that this is a great idea. It'll never happen. But it's a great idea.
I'm with you. It will not happen.
But you guys, I want to go.
It's a great idea.
Here's the thing. Star Wars couldn't survive with Disney money. Now, part of that is they also made the experience cost whatever it was, like $6,000 a night or whatever the hell it was.
It was like $2,000 or something, but it's a lot.
Some insane amount of money. But it was
that's what you get when you want live players and stuff.
Were crazy immersive. Somebody stole something and then like you had to decide if you were going to help the Jedi or the Sith or whatever. And everybody's got a role at dinner and there's like a whole thing. But I don't even know if we have enough interest to do that for Magic.
Well, honestly. Look, because I just sometimes watch stupidly long crap. There was a cool video by Jenny Nicholson on YouTube about the spectacular failure of the Star Wars Hotel, where she goes 4 hours deep, y'all. Going through every part of the experience, how it worked, what they ate, the shows in the thing, where they stayed, what they could buy. I mean, up one side and down the other. And ultimately, one of the biggest issues is that, let's say you do this, you're never going to do it again.
That's the part that sucks the most. Is I have not watched that video. I don't particularly plan to. It is not the type of content that I am drawn to. However, Disney will not be hurt by that video's creation.
No, of course not.
Of course not.
Future experiences like it are likely to be hurt. Because here's the thing. As soon as the Star Wars Hotel failed, there were other experiences that were going to be similar and cheaper that got their funding pulled. And so it's an unfortunate fact of how things go that like, oh, people don't like this. Well, the thing that is fairly like it, but very distinct, also won't get
and that's tough because the Star Wars one was both very expensive to produce, and expensive to experience. Where I don't think that would necessarily be the case for a ton of other different types of IPs.
Go support your local LARP, everybody.
I think ultimately
that thing in Vegas, it's called the Playground. If you want to check it out, it's super crazy.
Yeah, and for a video like that, normally it takes me multiple days. I kind of take in like 30 minutes at a time type stuff. And they've got it all chaptered out if you care about any particular point of the experience. But either way, I think otherwise is A, they couldn't really cycle the content. B, the systems they had were buggy as hell. Most of them didn't work. And C, what I thought was really interesting was that they had to design an experience that worked if you didn't care about the experience. You know what I'm saying? Even if you never interacted with anything, you didn't go through the app to do stuff, but you got to get, you got to move forward somehow so you understand what's happening. That was interesting. And the fact that one of the first things they do is explain to you what a fake alarm is and what a real alarm is, because there's going to be a fake alarm during the experience, and real alarm is get out of the hotel. So thought that was interesting.
That's just this. I mean, look, I don't really want to watch that video, but
it's cool.
So I guess I have to watch that video because there are some complaints that are correct. There are some criticisms that are correct. One imagines almost all of them are correct.
Yeah, and
I don't know how to parse the difference between what is a complaint and what is a constructive criticism.
Right, and for someone who LARPs as hard as you do, I would love to see your thoughts on that matter. Let's move on to some splash damage that I definitely want to get in as we wind down here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Banned Unofficial Accessories keeps the porn playmats off of stuff.
Oh, okay.
That's actually also, I think, only for one big event that's a regional, but whatever. The real thing I want to talk about for splash damage that's not Magic, but it's close to Magic, is that Pixelborn has been shut down, will be offline as of the middle of next month. Pixelborn.
Sad days.
Yeah, if you don't know, Pixelborn was the digital client for their Lorcana trading card game. Lorcana trading card game is very popular, has been doing bukus of sales, has held on through 4 sets now. Ravensburger finally got the print runs under control to where we actually have product that we can sell in stores and online, and that's great. And all along, the whole time, this one guy, it's one dude who was making this client, this digital client that was very kind of Hearthstone-esque. And of course, you came with 4 of everything, and he would add cards to the client as they were previewed throughout the seasons. And as far as I understand it, has all the cards through set 4 there and working right now. And you can still play it for the next 2 weeks if you want to go through the hoops to set it up and so on. But he said, and was always clear, that if he got any pushback from Disney or Ravensburger, he would shut it down. And Disney came a knocking very softly. They was just like, how dare you, we're going to sue you in the ground. They were like, hey, can you not do that? And he's like, yep, we're not doing that. And so even if all the Patreon money went to charity, it doesn't matter. They're the rights holders. They get the ability to do this. I hate this because this is the only this is the only way I interacted with Lorcana. And got to sort of experience his gameplay and see what cards were good and why. I thought that was interesting. As far as I know, a lot of content creators obviously rely on this a lot, and a lot of tournament players rely on this a lot, where you don't have to buy 4 of this $50 whatever to see if it's any good in your deck. So
I think from a legal perspective, they have to pursue it, right? Especially if they're even going to ever consider doing their own thing, and to prevent other people from going, well, you knew about Pixelborn, you didn't say anything. So we knew this day was coming, right?
Oh yeah,
At some point,
it was a win.
The mouse is going to get paid, right? Like one way or the other,
right?
Like we know. But the one thing I've been pushing for the whole time is I'm hoping, and he didn't post this in his message he put up, but I'm hoping on some level he had the conversations to either sell them the code or parts or whatever, and or get himself a position being an expert on how to make this work with them, because it would be sad to see all of this work and everything just go to waste and him not be rewarded for the effort that he put in.
Well, I've thought about this, and I'm thinking about there's 2 different ways this happens. First of all, welcome everybody from Jim Davis, with 270 people showing up. How you doing? Thanks.
What's up, everybody?
Hey,
oh my,
we're a news show. We're here every week, and so we're talking about things
warning, we've got 10 minutes left in the show.
About 10 minutes. It's fine. But you got some good ones because we're talking about things that aren't related to Magic exactly. This being Pixelborn being shut down. So you have the Pixelborn client, and so you are Ravensburger. Now, do you want to reach out to this independent production that is clearly independent? And by that I mean it was just one dude.
Yeah, one person operation.
And I'm, look, certainly all the credit to the world. But it's not a very polished application. You know what I mean? Sure. It's not something you would see as the Disney logos on it somewhere officially. So I think it would need a ton of that work. But it works. However, and the other half of this is that we don't know if Ravensburger this whole time has been surfing around, talking to different studios to try to get them to develop a client the way that they want it or whatever, that Disney is happy working with because everyone has to be cool up and down the chain.
Yeah, and, that's compelling.
Right, and in a very corporate business environment for you to go in to Disney and say, hey, we want to hire this guy who made this thing on his own, and they're going like, wait, what about support? What about, assurances of different deadlines and content being met and so on? You can't put it all on the weight of this one person versus a studio that you have developed.
And let him be in charge of it.
You certainly could. I'm just trying to look at why they would and why they wouldn't. Yeah. I think the why they would is the experience angle, clearly. But why they wouldn't is deals we're not aware of, or it's just not polished enough to be a Disney product. And it doesn't have, it didn't have any way to monetize in the client either. So making all of that happen while also continuing to add content while you're trying to keep up with the train is difficult. So
maybe I think also, there's
go ahead. No, go for it.
I believe it was Ultron who said a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts. And we all knew that this day was coming when Pixelborn would get shut down. The creator knew that it was going to get shut down. Ice sculptors make ice sculptures expecting them to melt by the next day. This was a beautiful moment where something unique was happening and was created, and I think that that's lovely. The amount of free advertising that Lorcana got through content and through advertising and all of that, just like YouTube people making Lorcana stuff on Pixelborn is truly staggering. So I am hopeful, and I played Pixelborn for quite a while. The Discord is a robust place that will continue to have probably the most cutting-edge Lorcana discussions that exist available on the internet, even after the app goes away. So, kudos for creating something amazing. And I am hopeful that something official will come out of it for the creators.
You know what, though? This is a hell of a portfolio builder.
Yes,
right? Like, too. If you want to go to somebody to work on apps or put stuff together, you can be like, no, I built this whole thing myself, and this whole economy built up around it.
Feather in the cap.
And I was there by myself, right? Like, so that's that. The only other thing is, does this mean that either Ravensburger or Disney is now ready to move to either pushing out or starting creation of their own client? Because I feel like that's probably when they decide they need to start pushing back on it. That, hey, we're going to have an official thing. We got to get rid of this other thing.
You got to get rid of the unofficial. You can't have people Googling and running into some random fan project. It's got to be the real thing. And, if we're going to start quoting Vision, what is grief but love everlasting? You know what I mean?
So, it was Vision who said that to Ultron.
Right.
And then Ultron said, you're incredibly naive. And then Vision said, well, I was born yesterday. And then he turned him into ashes.
Oops.
Good job.
Fair.
We're nerds. Let's move on here. Turn the corner here to the finisher where we tell a joke at the end of the show, written by Reuben himself.
This week's joke is not as magic themed as I would have liked for it to be, but we're here anyway.
Yeah, love persevering is the grief quote.
That's right.
All right, so this past week was Memorial Day in the U.S., which is traditionally the first day of summer for movie releases. This past weekend, however, was the worst for movie ticket sales since 1995, with Mad Max Furiosa barely beating the Garfield movie in sales. It's been a weird period for Hollywood recently, so tell me, what is your pitch for how to save the pictures, Reuben?
Well, AI is taking over, and you all know how much of a big fan I am of generative artificial intelligence. So I'm excited for the next big step forward in artificial content with a fully iterated, big box office smash hit starring AI itself called The Generator. With totally unique, non-scripted, non-stolen catchphrases like, I will return, adios, friend, and of course the instant classic, come with me if you want to not die.
That feels like something AI would write.
Yeah.
It would. It would. PowrDragn?
All right, so we know Hollywood's addicted to sequels, but they're also addicted to superheroes, also addicted to nostalgia. So with all that being said, we want to make the most nostalgic superhero sequel of all time. So coming this summer, we invite you to the Snyder Cut of Tim Burton's Batman.
Oh, just stop. Oh, goodness. Now, if you want to put the butts in the seats, you need three things. You need star power, IP crossover, and the most important key of all is super cute animals. So I'm excited for the movie and magic event of the summer, Loot, the Key to Everything, starring the voice talents of the only possible choice for such a role. That's Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
He'll be the voice of...
Man, I was almost with you to the Chris Pratt.
You know it's going to be Chris Pratt. It's always Chris Pratt.
It has to be Chris Pratt.
After he got Mario, man, it was over. Game was over.
Yeah, it's still a bit absurd that happened.
And now it's Garfield. So.
We had a
And now he's
voice of
Garfield.
Mario
God.
already, and we went and got Chris Pratt. It's
did.
like, come on.
Mr. Marionette. All right. That ends another live episode of Magic Mike. Thanks for joining us here to discuss all things magic. Thank you, PowrDragn.
Hey, thanks for everybody watching, listening. It's fun to be here as always. And don't forget, use your code Save Money with Magic Mikes over at Cool Stuff Inc.
Thank you, Reuben.
Hey, thank you all for coming and showing up. If you want to join us live next week, we are here every week at the same time on the same channel on Wednesday night. And now we're going to be rating someone who has fewer than 30 viewers who would love for you to join them in whatever they're doing on Magic Arena.
Yeah, at least hang around long enough for the raid and say hi to them.
Right.
You know, make them feel good.
There you go.
Also, if you're going to be around on Tuesdays, we do occasionally do trivia for Magic. We do some Baldur's Gate 3 running around. Like, we're just knuckleheads and hang out on Tuesday nights. So you should come by.
There you go. As we move here to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com. Use the code MagicMikes. Our co-sponsor, Mana Traders, my co-host, PowrDragn, and Reuben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us on our exclusive member Discord, live on twitch.tv at MagicMikes, live or taped on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at MagicMikesCast and on TikTok at MagicMikesCast. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody. And now on Twitch, we raid Scuffle Deluxe.
I do not know who that person is, so that's cool.
I don't know who it is either.
Me either, but tell them we sent you. Tell them they're great. We do appreciate you.
God, I hope they're still online. I have such
Reuben,
a bad track record.
You better have at least vetted this person is online.
Please, Lord.
We'll see you guys next week.